But Detroit was only the first of 3 parts to the American invasion of Canada. In October, a second American army assembled in New York at Lewiston, across the Niagara River from the Canadian village of Queenston.
The general that's in command of the region for the American Army is Stephen Van Rensselaer. He's one of the richest men in New York.
Stephen was a fine fellow, an effective politician, a statesman in New York State, but he had no military experience at all.
The British Army, by contrast, was led by Isaac Brock himself. Brock had sailed quickly down Lake Erie to take command of a small army of regulars and irregulars.
At Queenston Heights, Isaac Brock's got black troops following him. He's got poor Canadian farm kids. And he's also got a couple hundred Grand River warriors. It's this mishmash of people who all come together and fight and defend our version of North America.
Brock's forces were assembled along the heights at Queenston. Yet Van Rensselaer decided to send his army across the Niagara River at Queenston, directly into the British troops.
The Americans had thousands of militia, hundreds of regulars that could have crossed the river, but they only arranged for 13 boats to carry them. Now, the Niagara River is a difficult piece of water to get across, and especially in the middle of the night, and especially when it's rowed by men who haven't been across the Niagara River before.
At dawn on October 13th, 1812, the Americans began to cross as cannon on both sides roared incessantly. A group of Americans reached the shore, then found a fisherman's path up the cliff and took the heights overlooking the town.
Brock knew that if the Americans were able to successfully get a toehold and capture Queenston Heights, there's a good chance that the British would lose Upper Canada.
He leads British soldiers up the hill, dismounted with his sword drawn in full view of the American troops.
An American soldier at about 20 paces away with a double-shotted musket fired at Brock, hit him in the heart and killed him instantly.
The British raised the shout, "Revenge the General!" But the Americans held the high ground, a decisive textbook advantage. But the Grand River Iroquois warriors did not engage in textbook warfare.
Our style of warfare, we like to stick close to cover, keep stealthy and gain the advantage on the enemy. Queenston Heights was basically a flanking maneuver on the native part.
The native warriors worked their way behind the Americans, then burst out of the woods screaming their war cries. One American remembered, "I thought hell had broken loose and led her dogs of war upon us. I expected every moment to be made a cold Yankee."
American militia that are still on the American side of the river can hear the whoops and hollers of the warriors as they're popping in and out of the woods, taking shots and so forth.
Once the militia on the American side heard the war cries of our warriors, they refused to fight on Canadian soil. And they refused to cross to the Canadian side and aid the regulars that were being attacked up on the heights.
The Americans who had crossed the river were doomed. John Beverly Robinson, a British artilleryman, watched them go.
John Beverly Robinson. They had no place to retreat to, and were driven to the brink of the mountain which overhangs the river. Many leaped down the side of the mountain to avoid the horrors which pressed on them, and were dashed in pieces by the fall.
Many died. The rest surrendered, giving the British almost 1,000 prisoners and one of the most momentous victories in the history of Canada. But they had lost one very important man. Isaac Brock, once called the savior of Western Canada, was now gone.
Brock was one of those rare individuals who has a tremendous amount of charisma, a tremendous amount of organizational talent. This is a tremendous blow to Upper Canada. It's a tremendous blow to the British military in that time period.
Yet the British, Canadian, and Native forces had again beaten back an invasion.